Las Vegas, a city where fortunes are won, lost, and stolen. Every glittering casino is a fortress, guarded by cameras, security teams, and decades of experience, stopping cheaters and thieves. So when a man in a motorcycle helmet calmly walked into the Bellagio, waved a weapon at the high-stakes tables, and walked out minutes later with $1.5 million in chips, it didn't just shock the Strip, it stunned the world. This wasn't a movie. This is a story about fantasy colliding with reality, about a man who pulled off the impossible, only to crumble under the weight of his own ego. This is the rise and fall of the Bellagio Bandit. Before he was the Bellagio Bandit, Anthony Carleo was Anthony Assad, the son of a respected Las Vegas municipal court judge, George Assad. From the outside, it looked like Carleo had every opportunity in life. He grew up in a world of law and order, the son of a man who built his career holding people accountable. But Anthony wasn't his father. Friends described him as a look-at-me kind of person, someone with a huge ego who craved the spotlight. He was drawn to the glamour of success, but didn't have the patience for the hard work it required. He moved from Colorado to Las Vegas to attend UNLV, but his ambitions weren't exactly academic. He was chasing the Vegas dream. He even found some success as a real estate broker, owning a mobile DJ service and a limo company. But his life was about to follow a tragically familiar script. His lawyer said it began innocently, a prescription after a car accident, but that spiraled into reckless choices and self-destruction. His life in Vegas spiraled downward. He lost whatever money he had at the poker tables, outmatched by far more skilled players. When the financial crisis hit, his businesses crumbled, and by 2009, he had to file for bankruptcy. He ended up living at home with his family, his life a far cry from the high-roller fantasy he so desperately wanted to live. According to an undercover officer's testimony, his frustrated father cut his monthly allowance from $1,000 down to just $600. For a man with expensive habits and a craving for high-stakes thrills, that was the breaking point. Embarrassed, angry, and feeling like a complete failure, a risky idea started to take root. If he couldn't win the money, he'd just take it. The fantasy of walking into a casino and taking what he wanted became an obsession. And this wasn't just a fleeting thought, it was a plan. In the pre-dawn quiet of Tuesday, December 14, 2010, a Suzuki motorcycle pulled up to the Bellagio's North Valet entrance. The driver was dressed in black, his face completely hidden by a full-faced, white-striped motorcycle helmet. He parked the bike facing the street, ready for a quick getaway. He got off his bike, walked quickly through the valet, and without hesitation, entered the casino, passing a security guard before locking onto his target. The massive casino floor was quieter than usual. His prey was the high-limit craps pit, one of the only games still running. With the table in sight, he reached into his pocket and produced something that made everyone freeze. "Move!" he yelled. The space around him emptied. He reached over the table and started scooping handfuls of chips into a bag. He wasn't grabbing randomly. He was focused on the highest denominations. He grabbed stacks of $100, $5,000, and the casino's most prized possessions, the $25,000 cranberry chips, named for their distinctive reddish color. These were the chips reserved for the world's wealthiest high rollers. In a flash, he had stuffed his bag with roughly $1.5 million in Bellagio plastic. All security could do was watch him fade into the darkness. In under 60 seconds, Anthony Carleo had done the impossible. He had robbed the Bellagio and made himself a millionaire. The heist made international news, with many comparing it to a scene from Ocean's 11. But there was a fundamental flaw in his plan, a problem that would be his undoing. He hadn't stolen cash, he had stolen casino chips. But, as he was about to learn, their value vanished the moment he stepped outside those doors. Inside, he was a millionaire. Outside, they were nothing but plastic. He'd just executed one of the most fearless grabs in Vegas history, but his next move was reckless. Less than 24 hours after the heist, he walked right back into the Bellagio. He strolled right up to the same craps tables he'd hit, listening as staff and players whispered about the mysterious biker bandit, secretly savoring the fact that they were talking about him. "I just jacked this place, and now I'm going to cash in everything I took." This staggering arrogance kicked off a rapid and spectacular downfall. His main problem was the chips. The smaller ones were easy enough to cash, but the bulk of his $1.5 million haul was in those high-value cranberries, the $25,000 chips. Those chips were rarely touched by anyone but the most established high rollers, and anyone trying to cash a bunch of them would immediately come under intense scrutiny. Carleo started laundering the chips in the most ironic way possible, by gambling them away at the casino he stole them from. He checked into the Bellagio as a guest, and started living the high roller life he'd always dreamed of. He played no-limit Texas Hold'em, losing an $11,000 pot in one hand. Over the next few weeks, he poured $105,000 back into the casino, chasing wins that never came. On New Year's Eve alone, he burned through $72,000 at the tables. He later said it didn't matter if he won or lost. He was living the dream, being treated like royalty. But casino workers noticed something was off. His losses didn't line up with the huge amounts he was cashing out, raising a major red flag. While Carleo was playing the part of a wealthy whale, the Bellagio and Las Vegas police were making their own moves. Just 1 week after the heist, MGM Resorts, Bellagio's parent company, announced it was discontinuing the $25,000 cranberry chips. They set a deadline of April 22nd for anyone holding them to turn them in. This brilliant move put a ticking clock on Carleo. His most valuable assets were about to expire. Feeling the pressure, Carleo's desperation grew. He started bragging to poker buddies about his score. In one bizarre incident, a Salvation Army bell ringer tried to cash a $25,000 chip, claiming a stranger had just dropped it in his bucket. But Carleo's biggest mistake was taking his sales pitch online. On the popular 2+2 poker forum, a thread was buzzing with chatter about the heist. Carleo couldn't resist. Using the screen name Ocean Spray 25, a blatant nod to the cranberry chips, he posted messages asking if anyone knew where to get discounted cranberries. One user eventually got on the phone with Carleo, who shared details of the heist. When the user asked for proof, Carleo made a fatal error. He emailed a photo of two $25,000 chips. That email was immediately forwarded to the authorities, who traced its IP address directly to the home of Judge George Assad. Police set up a sting, with an undercover officer posing as Dominic, a buyer from out of town. The Bellagio itself funded the operation. Carleo sold Dominic several chips for a cut rate, usually between $7,000 and $10,000 each. During one of their meetings, the officer floated the idea of hitting the Bellagio. Carleo laughed and gave a chillingly casual 5-word confession: "I already did." The final act took place on February 2nd, 2011. Carleo met Dominic in a Bellagio bathroom to sell him more chips. After the exchange, police swarmed in and ordered him to the floor. During the investigation, police found he had already written plans to hit Caesar's Palace next. Now facing a mountain of charges, he stood before the court and pleaded guilty. At sentencing, his voice wavered as he apologized for the chaos he caused and the shame he had brought to his family. Judge Assad had already spoken publicly, saying he and his family were devastated and heartbroken. But as a man of the law, he believed those who break it must face the consequences. Carleo was ultimately sentenced to serve between 9 and 27 years in a Nevada prison. The story of the Bellagio bandit is now a Las Vegas legend, a cautionary tale about the illusion of the perfect crime. Carleo's heist was audacious in its simplicity, a fleeting moment of success, but his downfall was a masterclass in self-sabotage. He wasn't brought down by brilliant detective work or high-tech security. He was brought down by his own ego. He couldn't resist bragging, couldn't resist the allure of the high roller life, and couldn't resist returning to the scene of the crime. He had $1.5 million in his hands, but he was trapped. He achieved the dream of becoming a millionaire, but only in a world where he could never truly cash out. In the end, the Bellagio bandit wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was just a man who proved that getting the money is one thing, but getting away with it is something else entirely. Dive into our other investigations, like how HSBC helped a cartel move millions and the shocking story behind the Boeing 737 MAX disaster. Tap that like button and subscribe to catch more of our bite-sized documentaries.